sexual addiction. That aspect of Gom Jabbar episodes created disturbing ripples in the podcasting industry, especially among the books category. Very suggestive. And most of the other shows on Spotify knew Abu and Leo, alone among them, practiced some of these techniques in defiance of a general fear this could weaken them. Our sexual addiction only makes us stronger, you fools.
You fools! That's how our retention numbers are so high.
It's an interesting dimension to our Patreon subscription, but you know, it's there.
Get at us, call your daddy, or whatever it's called. Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
My name is Leo.
And folks, we are back once again to continue our deep dive read-through of Chapterhouse Dune, the last book in the Dune saga by Frank Herbert.
So good. So good.
Now, of course, before we dive into the pages today and the assigned reading, let's take care of some housekeeping and make Shoutout Mapes proud.
And as always, this kicks off with a spoiler warning. And as always, the spoiler warning hasn't changed. This is a book club episode. We are not going to be talking about anything past the pages assigned so far. So if you're caught up with today's episode and the assigned reading from today's episode, you are good to go. But this does mean we're talking about all of Frank's previous books leading up to Dune Chapterhouse.
That's right. And of course, up top, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, Daniel, Dion, Seth, Redden, Greer, Brad, Hutchins, and Kevin Mohanram.
Yes.
Folks.
Yeah.
I'd install Comm Eyes in your homes so that I could just watch you and maybe pick up on some of that generosity. Get a sense of how truly big your hearts are.
Yeah. Needs to
I'd be
studied.
watching you all the time.
Yeah. In fact, who's to say
Day
we
and
aren't?
Night.
Day and night. Infrared to see at the nighttime. Yeah.
Just think about it. Consider it.
Just don't examine your lamps too closely these days, all right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's too real.
Yeah.
We're kidding. Maybe. Are we? Who's to say? Also, our thank you extends to all of our patrons at every level. Seriously, the support that you all provide makes what we do possible, and it means the world to us.
That's right. And look, if you, like me, have subscription fatigue, if you're out there canceling subscriptions left and right, we get it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the means to become a monthly patron supporter at the moment, that's A-okay. Check out the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes below. That's a great place where you can send us a one-time tip to say thank you. All of that goes a long way toward making this show.
Now, today's episode, y'all know the game plan. We assigned some chapters. Hopefully you read them. Either way, we're going to be talking about them. We're going to summarize them quickly. We're going to get into a takeaway. And then we've got some yummy, today very chunky spice morsels. Hope that sounds good to you, because we're going to get to that right after a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we're back, we're talking about Chapter 7.
Welcome back, folks. Let's start, as always, with these book clubs with a summary of today's assigned reading. That's chapters 7, 8, and 9.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about our first chapter today. So, in this short first chapter today, chapter number 7, we are finally reunited with now Reverend Mother Shiana.
Oh, shit. What a glow up. All right.
What a glow up. She's been busy these last few years, certainly. Shiana at the moment is posted at a desert watch station where, when we join her, she's currently having a pretty difficult time molding some black sensiplas, we're told.
Same.
Her goal is to mold this black plas into a particular creation, something she feels deep inside her but can't quite grasp.
Mm-hmm.
and she's frustrated. Ultimately, she gives up. She kind of like crushes the plas back into a blob, and she's like, fuck, I can't figure this out. We've all been there. If you're a creative person, if you've done pottery or anything, you know this feeling. So after giving up on this plas sculpture, she then kind of looks out the window and begins to reflect on her time with the Bene Gesserit. And she thinks about how she is a part of these larger Bene Gesserit plans. She is a part of their Missionaria Protectiva, and their goal is ultimately, we learn, to bring forth a worm. Remember, they're kind of cultivating worms on Chapterhouse at the moment, and to use Shiana and her very unique ability to speak to and control the worms to turn her into a religious deity, a subject of worship across the Empire as a means of control. Quote, "Holy Shiana, the God Emperor is her thrall. See how the sacred sandworms obey her. Leto has returned." End quote. That's fascinating. This plan, of course, we saw the seeds of it back in Heretics, right? This was part of what Terraza and Odrade and the Bene Gesserit were scheming in that last book. Here, Shiana lays it out for us pretty clearly. This has been the plan with Shiana and Duncan all along.
So I have a question. This is just do you think that is actually Odrade's plan?
I think it is one of Odrade's backup plans, yeah.
I agree. I do not think this is her primary plan. I think, if anything, I think this is like a need to know subset of like, we'll let that continue. Because I also really get the impression that like, I don't even think Terraza is trying to recreate the way that Shiana's going, oh, look, they're like building up all of this pressure around a messiah and I'm going to be the figurehead. That doesn't sound like something Terraza would have had as like plan A. And so this is also very interesting to me because we're seeing how little Shiana is aware, even now that she is a Reverend Mother. It still doesn't seem like she's fully aware of what is in store for her or what plans there are for her among the kind of higher ups. I don't know. Just a thought. Yeah,
that's a great point. I completely agree. I don't see this as the plan A that Odrade is cooking up in this book. I don't think the Bene Gesserit ever just have one plan in motion. And I think Shiana is just a secondary, tertiary plan that's kind of in motion on the side as well.
Yeah, true.
Well, regardless of how critical this plan is to the overall schemes, Shiana wants no fucking part of it. We learn from her thoughts here that she has begun to rebel. She's pushing back against this box that the Bene Gesserit have placed her in, these plots that they've intertwined her in. And we learn that, for example, she has engaged in several sexual encounters that are considered outrageous even by Bene Gesserit standards.
Correct.
Doggy in style. Order that is notably quite open about sex and control.
Yeah. Having sex with the lights on. Whoa.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Can we say that? Can we say that on the internet?
I don't think we're allowed. I think we're shadow banned now.
Yeah, I think we're going to get like shadow banned. Spotify's going to kick us off. Sex with the lights on. Jesus Christ. Of course, later, I think actually in a later chapter, in 8 or 9 maybe, we learn that these outrageous acts that she's practicing is what she has learned from Marbella. She is practicing some of the Honored Madre sexual techniques, which is, really towing the line of what the Bene Gesserit allow. But Shiana's doing it as a form of rebellion.
Yeah.
Now, it's at this point that Shiana's thoughts turn toward Duncan Idaho, the Gola, remember him? And it's revealed to us that she has formed somewhat of an alliance with Duncan. They've created their own secret hand gesture language to communicate with each other. And ultimately, it seems like they are scheming alongside Marbella to escape somehow, ? This doesn't seem super well thought out, but basically they want out. They want to get out of whatever these Bene Gesserit plots are. But of course, the unanswered, massive question that's lingering is, how do you do that?
Right.
How do you escape the Bene Gesserit grasp, especially in a universe that's under assault by the Honored Madres? Shiana thinks about how there would be nowhere for them to go. Where in the universe would accept them as simple refugees, knowing who they are and knowing what they can do? they almost have no choice but to be wrapped up in these universe shaking plots.
Yeah.
We also learn from her thoughts here as the chapter wraps up that Shiana harbors some confused feelings about Duncan and Marbella. She has some sort of affection toward Duncan, but is actually kind of relieved that the Bene Gesserit original plan of her and Duncan mating hasn't gone through because Marbella has been the monkey wrench in the picture. So she's, her feelings are mixed about all of this. But one thing that's pretty clear through all of this is she's really inspired by how rebellious Duncan and Marbella seem to be, how they're constantly pushing back against the sisterhood. And I loved this thought, this concluding thought at the end of this chapter that Shiana has. Quote, "I will create my own statement of my life. I will create my own life. Damn the Bene Gesserit. Call it rebellion, call it any other name. The force she felt in her breast could not be denied." End quote.
Hell yeah. Oh, that's great. I also wanted to shout out here, as we kind of wrap up this chapter, along the same lines as I don't think her as the figurehead of a new Kwisatz Haderach style program is actually the Bene Gesserit plan. And yet it kind of seems like she thinks it is. She's kind of talking about that's what they have in plan for me. I got a real sense in this chapter, even though Shiana is now a Reverend Mother, I still see some naivety in how she understands the order and how she understands the people above her, in particular, Odrade. She thinks earlier in the chapter, quote, "Yes, Darwi Odrade, your former student has become a rebel against you," end quote. Oh, shit. Odrade probably hates rebels, doesn't she? No, Odrade is one of the most heretical people in the Bene Gesserit. She has Ocean Child, Sea Child, whatever it's called, Sea Child. She has that rebellion as part of her core identity. So the idea of Shiana wielding this and thinking that as if it's some crazy checkmate against her tyrannical boss, I think betrays how little she understands Odrade.
Yeah.
But also maybe that's by design. Maybe Odrade is keeping her in the dark, allowing her to think this is what is going to happen as a means of then pivoting at some point as a 5D chess move, right? But we are seeing someone with that veil still pulled over their eyes, even as they are now an awakened Reverend Mother.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think you're spot on. I think Darwi Odrade is the only Reverend Mother out here playing 5D chess. Everyone else is still playing 3 or 4D. And in fact, I think she has probably kept Sea Child and her inner rebellion secret from everyone. We only know it as the reader because we're in her head so much. I doubt any other sister knows it.
Indeed.
Including Shiana.
God, Odrade is such a good character.
So good.
Well, Chapter 8, our next chapter. We join Odrade and Belanda. You'll never guess what they're doing. They're talking. They're talking in a meeting in Odrade's office. Could not have guessed, I know. Now, a lot of this chapter is delivered through Odrade's inner thoughts, so we're going to touch on some of her musings and sort of the important things to note from this chapter. And right now, the most important task at hand is planning for the sisterhood to scatter across the universe. They are performing right now their own mini scattering, where they are selecting members to basically go off to literally destinations unknown. Nobody can know where they are going, so that the Bene Gesserit will survive no matter what. This is like an ultimate, this is plan E or plan F on the list. Things are going badly. This is how badly they are evacuating, basically.
Yeah, basically.
I did want to point out, this feels, we didn't get the direct comparison within this chapter, but this feels oddly resonant considering we just learned a couple chapters ago that this is also how the Jewish people survived all of these years. They performed their own mini scattering very early on. And as the Bene Gesserit have said, they suspect there are planets, entire populated planets of people who are just like these Jewish communities out on that planet that no one else has been to. And that is how they are, as part of their complete cover, how they have guaranteed their survival this long. I cannot help but think this is the Bene Gesserit learning from the Jewish people, going,
Yeah.
we see that it has worked for them. Maybe that's something we can do at some point. And now this is them doing that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
Now, it does feel resonant, right? Considering the proximity of learning about the Jewish people and their own kind of mini scattering. But
yeah, absolutely.
in any case, Odrade is worrying that the sisters they're sending out into the scattering, their own little personal scattering, she's worried that they'll never return. That there is this sort of like unforeseen bad thing that can happen to Reverend Mothers when they are so removed from the kind of proximity to other members of the order.
Yeah.
Something akin to what happened possibly to the Honored Matre and how the Honored Matre came to be.
Uh-oh.
Murbella has hinted that the Honored Matre are a result of scattered fish speakers and Bene Gesserit from thousands of years. So they've kind of like,
wow,
these orders have sort of mixed.
Wow.
Again, we know that the Bene Gesserit don't have spice out in the scattering. So without spice, they may lose their other memory. They lose that continuity. They lose that noble purpose. And then what happens to all of that capability when exposed to whatever's out in the scattering?
Right.
Now, this is a little bit of a different situation because every single Reverend Mother who's going out into this new diaspora scattering of Bene Gesserit assets is bringing a sandworm with them. They're bringing a sand trout with them. We now know that they are somewhat successfully seeding Chapterhouse with the sand trout in a way that is creating a desert environment where they expect to one day see sandworms. So they can recreate that on other planets out in the galaxy. So we also might be seeing right now the very first time that sandworms en masse are being exported to other parts of the galaxy, along with their kind of Bene Gesserit, overseers, basically.
Yeah. My gentle pushback on that would be, we haven't had success yet. Shiana says in Chapter 7, no sand
spice
blow,
no
spice melange yet at all. There's a desert out there.
Right.
And we haven't spotted a worm yet, but we're hoping there's somewhere.
Right.
And we're hoping it'll eventually show up. So this still feels like a very big gamble to me.
It does.
As far as let's take sandworms out there and hope it works. We haven't actually gotten it to work here on Chapterhouse, but let's hope. So I think this doesn't feel like a surefire thing.
It doesn't at all. You're absolutely right. I do think that we don't know what the failed attempts of transplanting sandworms to other planets looked like in the past. Something about the way that Frank handles this makes me think that this is maybe the first time we're seeing a proper transformation of a planet into a desert planet. Because so often, like Leto reflects that people in the past, when they tried to take worms, full worms, onto planets that were already desert planets, and then it didn't work.
Yeah.
And we also know that Arrakis started as a lush green planet that then was made into the planet that it is today. So I think that they have achieved something that has not been achieved before, but you're also right that that does not mean that they have worms. So I think that they are gambling that, okay, we see the desert forming. We see that the desert is growing. So eventually there will be worms probably, because otherwise, why is the desert growing? But nevertheless, they don't know. And that's where the gamble is. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Now, all of this also is to say the theory that the Bene Gesserit who went off into the scattering, who never came back, by the way, not a single Bene Gesserit member ever came back from the scattering. This theory that they all became Honored Matre is seeming to have more and more ground. And Odrade at this point fully suspects that this is true. Quote, if they had ever been Bene Gesserit, they now were a terrible distortion, blindly suicidal, end quote.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, Belanda, still in the room, if you can believe it. She's been here the whole time. She asks about Duncan, Idaho. She's like, hey, Duncan and Murbella, by the way, they've been fucking like just so much. And as a result, they have had children. They have had 3 children already.
Whoa. Yeah.
And again, I am blown away. I forgot how much time is encompassed in this book because, again, you're thinking, so that's at least multiple years, 3-4 years at least,
Yeah. I mean, the Miles Teg goal is like 9 or 10. So we're talking like a decade between End of Heretics and where we are now in Chapterhouse.
Yeah. And this whole time they've just been Marbella and Duncan have just been having kids. Just fucking the whole time. It's crazy. Now, the breeding mistresses are overjoyed. They're like, hey, Marbella, we're not sure yet if we can really bring her onto our team, but we've got these kids, and the kids might have the benefits of whatever genetics have happened out in the scattering. They might have the benefits of having an honored Matre mother and a Duncan Idaho Gola who the Bene Tleilax have fucked with. So these children might be just absolute superhumans.
Yeah, what a cocktail of genetics.
I mean, listen, kind of nepotism on a genetic scale, right? Like what an inheritance. Yeah. Now, Belanda has been super obsessed with their relationship, and especially in Duncan's abilities to sexually bind someone like the honored Matre are able to.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, this relationship that they have, Duncan and Marbella, it is kind of a love-hate relationship. Like they are clearly bound to one another, but they're also always like, Marbella's constantly being like, I could kill you right now, but I'm not going to.
Yep.
Love you, babe. Don't make me kill you. I could, but I'm not going to. It's very hot and cold. It's very stressful reading about it. Secondhand anxiety for sure.
But also Duncan hilariously is so confident
he's like
of the sexual binding that he's completely unafraid. He doesn't even flinch when she tries to scare him, right?
Yeah, which is
he's like,
so
you're not
hot.
gonna kill me, babe.
Oh my God. His little smile. She goes to like nearly decapitate him with her foot, and he's like, yeah, I know you're not going to. And I'm like, oh, he's so hot. Oh, that's so successfully hot. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbothered king. And it's clear that Marbella, in all of this, although she is bound to him and will not decapitate him, though she very much could, she is clearly frustrated that he so successfully bonded her.
Yeah.
With basically the honored Matre tricks, right?
Yeah. A taste of her own medicine.
Yeah. And Belanda sees that medicine being exchanged back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, hence children. And she's like, that's what, yeah, just constantly that medicine, you know? And she's basically admitting that there's a deep temptation to having that kind of power over people and having that ability. And this also comes up in a conversation with Odrade and Belanda, talking about like, maybe that's what fell the Bene Gesserit who were out in the scattering. You know, you remove them enough from other memory and stuff like that. Maybe you see that kind of control and that power and you go, yeah, I want that. I want that control. I want that power.
Yeah.
And Belanda is adamant, we must not fall to that temptation because again, maybe this is how we turn to being like the honored Matre.
Right.
Also, this is why Shiana's rebellion, her sexual rebellion, is so scary because they are seeing that she is kind of leaning into some of these honored Matre techniques, and they're going, "Ooh, maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe this is the beginning of the fall of the Bene Gesserit. We don't know. This has never happened before."
Yeah, right.
Now, really, what this room needs is a third Reverend Mother to partake in the conversation. So Tom Mullane enters. Tom Mullane's like, yeah, it's me. I'm old. And basically informs the other two that she has been inspecting the Bene Gesserit axolotl tanks. So the volunteer Bene Gesserit members who have become these abominable pieces of technology. Yeah. And she believes that the lone Tleilaxu master, Scytale, has withheld information from them. So the last remaining Tleilaxu who gave them the blueprints to make these tanks, quote unquote make, has withheld important information from them, but they are not sure what that information is. The Suk doctors they have on staff have inspected the Golas that have come out of the tanks. They haven't seen anything wrong with them. But of course, Odrade is as unbothered as always and goes, of course he's withheld stuff from us. He has to have bargaining chips. You know, like that's just the nature of he's keeping his life, you know, worth keeping alive. Like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And so they're basically they're kind of powerless in this situation. They're like, we just have to keep an eye out for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, Belanda, of course, doesn't like that idea. Belanda's like, oh, come on. Can't we torture him? Can't we like fucking take his fingers off one at a time, please? Tom Mullane and Odrade are like, Jesus, Belanda, are you salivating? What is happening right now? But O'Drade's like, no, listen, we can't do that. Let's eat lunch. It's just so funny. She's
Hilarious.
like,
I'm hungry.
I'm hungry. Let's get lunch. They're like, oh, do we have time? And she's like, let's eat, you know? So good. I love this. She's the kind of boss I want for sure. And that's basically where the chapter ends. O'Drade is reflecting on a chat she had with Marbella about the idea of watchdogs and the kind of function of watchdogs within the Bene Gesserit, this very core idea in the Bene Gesserit. And we're going to talk about that in our takeaways, so don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But that is where the chapter wraps up, where O'Drade is back in her thoughts as they're delivering the steaming hot, delicious food fresh from the kitchens.
Yum.
The Chapterhouse chefs. Yeah. Michelin star, as it turns out, actually.
The only way to live. Have an in-house Michelin star chef. That's the dream. All right, before we move on to chapter 9 and wrap up our chapter summaries, I want to call out a couple of quick comments from the live chat, because we are recording this live on YouTube for patrons.
True.
Just some fun ones here that I wanted to very quickly call out. Pilot Pig says in the chat that I had a very hard time visualizing the Plaz. Is it like clay or Play-Doh? I always thought Plaz was clear, solid material. And then John Curtis in the chat replies, I see it as moldable volcanic glass like obsidian.
So
that's also how I saw it. How did you visualize it, Leo?
yeah, about the same, kind of like a black, like hard material, but that can be molded, like black Play-Doh, kind of like she's doing black clay, like clay sculpting, like on a potter's wheel or something, you know?
Yeah, I thought of it more as like black volcanic ash. And there was a line about her wearing some sort of glove. And in my mind, it was like she had these gloves that maybe had like sent out certain types of like electromagnetic waves, and the Plaz like reacted to the waves from her gloves, and she kind of like molded it and shaped it into a statue or something. Kind of a fun visual. Last comment I want to quickly shout out, again, John Curtis in the chat. Fanfiction idea, Tales of the Scattering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love that. I would love to hear what the fuck is going on out in the Scattering from thoughtful writers out there. And Pilot Pig responds, I honestly think by this point, the Scattering is far beyond the Milky Way. And I kind of feel that too, actually. Okay, moving on to chapter 9. In our final chapter from today's reading, we are with Rebecca, wild reverend mother of the Jewish people, you recall, who is currently kneeling in submission at a lunch banquet hosted by the great honored Matre and her guests.
Okay, pause. I feel like this was not part of the plan. when the rabbi was like, Lucilla, we're going to get your information safely off this planet, no one's ever going to suspect Rebecca. Now she's in front of the great honor mod. What the fuck? What happened?
The fuck? Yeah, I legit had to stop and flip my book back and be like, I must have missed a Rebecca chapter. I skipped a Rebecca chapter by accident. No, I didn't. We're just here in media res. And this is where we learn that Rebecca has gone through a number of physical modifications. We learn that she's had her eyes replaced in order to hide her spice addiction so that you can't see the blue within blue and recognize that she has gone through the agony.
I fully forgot, because I know that they have like contact lenses, right? Like even back in like Winsisia and Faradin, like people are have contact lenses to hide their addiction. Yeah. And this time they're like, no contact lenses. Take her eyeballs out and give her new eyeballs. What the fuck?
God, eye stuff creeps me out, and like even just reading that makes my like, eyes hurt.
And she's like, oh, my eye sockets hurt. And it's like, that's terrible. What an awful detail.
Okay, that's one modification she's had. Another modification we're told about is that she's actually gotten an implant within her body that steadily pumps metered doses of both spice melange and sheer.
Cool. Nice.
Because she has to hide this spice addiction, and because she can't let her eyes turn blue again before she's done with whatever task and her mission, she has this implant to help her out, to help control the addiction.
Yeah.
Now, while she is kneeling here, she's basically waiting for the great honored Matre and her friends to finish lunch. There's a lot of lunch happening in these chapters. Frank must have been
Insane.
hungry when he was typing these
He
up.
was, these last 2 chapters, he was really
He was like,
hungry.
damn, should I get lunch? Maybe I'll finish this chapter. Rebecca is just waiting, nervously, obviously, for the great honored matre to finish eating and then turn her attention to Rebecca. And really the only thing that's keeping her calm and collected in this moment is the presence of her other memories, the other memories that she has obtained from Lucilla, from their sharing. They are speaking to her, they are guiding her, they are reassuring her that it's going to be okay. Just keep it together. I found that really touching.
It was nice. I also want to highlight, Eli shares in the chat, the honored matre would certainly like check for contact lenses. That's a great point. So
That's a great point.
For sure, they are doing what they can to not be detected. We get it. We just don't like that her fucking eyeballs got pulled out and she got new ones.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's just crazy. Now, as Rebecca is kneeling here and waiting for the honored matres to finish their meal, her thoughts flash back to a previous conversation that she had with a rabbi. And from this conversation, it's clear to us that the old man is concerned about how things have unfolded and are unfolding. The rabbi fears that Rebecca has been quote unquote taken by the Bene Gesserit ever since her sharing with Lucilla. Yeah. It's clear that he mistrusts the sisterhood, but what's interesting is throughout the chapter, we constantly get references to the ways he has benefited directly from his relationship to the sisterhood. They have shared knowledge and resources and the literal technology that's on his farm.
Yeah, like the wind turbines.
The wind turbines has been thanks to a collaboration with the Bene Gesserit. So he benefits greatly from them. At the same time, he deeply mistrusts them. And it's hinted throughout this conversation, I think, that, in fact, the Jewish people have maybe even survived this long and made it this far because of that early partnership that they established with the Bene Gesserit all those eons ago. This has been a symbiotic relationship for both organizations.
Right. I have such sympathy. Like, I think I've seen criticisms levied against the rabbi for being kind of like, I don't know, too just about his behavior in general. But throughout this chapter, especially on this reread, I really got the sense that he's deeply afraid that he effectively traded Rebecca for this kind of allyship of the Bene Gesserit, right? Traded a member of his community for people who are not part of his community, which is so against how the Jewish people have survived this long, right? When we look at complete cover, they accept gifts from the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit know their secret and are keeping their secret, but even the Bene Gesserit are not trusting every member of the Bene Gesserit with every secret. So even the Bene Gesserit as a whole organization is not within that innermost trusted circle. They are still outsiders to the beliefs of the Jewish people. So the idea that like he's lost this person, he refers to her as daughter at one point, and I was thinking maybe this is literally his biological daughter, but I looked it up, and sometimes rabbis might refer to a disciple or a student or a beloved member of their community as a daughter, or there's like a Hebrew word that translates to daughter. But regardless, I think it's clear that Rebecca was really important to him, and the idea of like losing this person, her personality's gone. Like this person that he knew, who was part of his trusted inner circle, is now gone. Is like, that's a real sense of loss. And like, at what cost? He did this. He brought her to Lucilla. He allowed that thing to happen. He kind of shepherded that exchange. And now you've just lost this person who's an important part of your community. I think that loss is really key to how he behaves, and some of his like intellectualizing and some of his posturing, right? His glasses are as much a part of his outfit and his like costume as anything. Like there's something, or his uniform, I guess is what it's referred to. He's such an interesting character. And I saw a lot. I was very sympathetic to him. I think this read through, especially when it comes to this perceived loss of Rebecca and what that means for his people. Like, again, if one of your insiders has become an outsider, that puts everybody at risk. Your entire community is now at risk. And like, what does that mean? You know?
Yeah. I personally am going to withhold my thoughts on the rabbi until we
Sure.
learn more. It feels like I don't know him enough yet to judge his character or even get a sense of what his role is in the story this early on. I do question, for example, why he had Rebecca undergo the agony, because I think it's this chapter where she says, well, I underwent the spice agony because you wanted me to. So this is the end result, bro. Like, you told me to do this, and here we are. I have other memory now. And so I'm curious what the relationship here will be and what narratively his role will be in the story, because he does seem to be the voice of paranoia and ignorance in a narrative sense, whereas Rebecca is the voice of someone who's more open to change, a lot of the thematic ideas that we talk about in these stories. But I also agree that I understand why he's acting like this, right? It makes sense for him to act like this. He's lost a beloved member of his community. He's endangered himself and his community by getting involved in this plot now to get the Lampetus information back to the sisterhood. So he's afraid. He's like acting out of fear here, which totally makes sense.
Yeah. And I also want to highlight, I mean, I agree. We're not far enough into the book to have a full picture of him as a character. But even in this chapter, I love the moment. I don't think it's in the script, so I'll mention it here. I love the moment when he starts saying, it's kind of like us in our script sometimes. He starts saying, here's an interesting thought you might not have thought of. And then he realizes he has no idea what he's about to say. And he's like, oh shit, I don't have. So then he says, I'm just going to speak from the heart. I'm just going to speak truly, honestly. And what he says is like, I think the Bene Gesserit have kind of lost the plot a little bit. I don't think that they're really, I don't think that they're in line with their own mission statement as much anymore. And I think the tyrant also thought that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think that's exactly right. I think that's kind of the thesis of Heretics and Chapterhouse. And this rabbi just cuts to that truth. As we sort of try to feel out how Frank feels about this character as he's writing him, I get the sense that the rabbi is quite a wise and intelligent character, but he is also wrapped up in his community and his ultimate fear that his people will fall because of decisions he's made and that he has ultimately put people in jeopardy.
Yeah.
For the sake of this alliance, which has definitely benefited them, but also they didn't choose to trust the Bene Gesserit way back when the Bene Gesserit realized their secret. They were discovered by the Bene Gesserit, who have kept their secrets, but are now leveraging their secrets as a means of bartering, which also feels a little bit icky,
Yeah. And in fact, I have that full quote right here.
Oh, yeah.
Quote, perhaps they have been too long on the road to Damascus without a blinding flash of illumination, Rebecca. I hear them say they act for the benefit of humankind. Somehow, I cannot see this in them, nor do I believe the tyrant saw it. End quote. That is the rabbi, sort of speaking off the cuff, speaking from the heart, his thoughts and fears about the sisterhood, which I agree are totally valid. They are a valid criticism of that organization.
Yeah, I think this is also, that line in particular is what really makes him seem like a sympathetic character, or a character that like Frank is treating sympathetically. The fact that his from the heart thought is something that is so close to what Frank's intention as the author seems to be, addressing the Bene Gesserit's loss of noble purpose. It kind of signaled to me through this chapter to look at the rabbi and try to understand where he's coming from.
We'll see how the character goes. For me, the jury's still out on him, but I'm interested to see how he continues to play a role in the story. Returning to the chapter summary, and actually returning to the present moment, we're in the dining hall once again. Great honored Matre is cleaning up and licking her fingers, getting all the juicy juice off. Wow, I don't know why I'm describing it like this. They're done eating.
What was the sound she made as she was licking her fingers? Just one more time for the... Oh, okay, yeah, good.
They're done eating is the point, and it's time for the interrogation. Finally, the great honored Matre's attention turns toward Rebecca, and she begins grilling Rebecca about a number of topics, but all generally related to the Bene Gesserit, clearly. She asks about the Bene Gesserit. She asks about the events on Gamu in particular. Have you heard of Miles Tig? Do you know what the rumors are? She also asks about Truthsay. You were married to a Truthsayer. Tell us about this ability. What can you tell us? And throughout the interrogation, Rebecca plays woefully ignorant. She's kind of like, I hear the Bene Gesserit play it safe. I hear they're not quite as rich as you are, Great Honored Matre. She kind of plays along in an ignorant way and answers truthfully about some things, right? She says, yeah, I've heard the rumors about Miles Tegg, but then also is strategically kind of opaque about other information regarding Truthsayer, the Sisterhood. As she is doing this, of course, the sisters in her other memory are analyzing strategically what the Honored Matre is letting slip through this questioning. You know, what do they know? What don't they know? What are they seeking? How can we strategically get an angle here? This is all important information that she can take back to the sisters on Chapterhouse. In fact, in a moment here at the end of the interrogation, Rebecca recognizes that power-hungry people, like the Great Honored Matre, love to flex their power by doing things that people don't want, right?
Yeah.
You wanted me to eat the apple? Fuck this apple.
Fuck this apple. That I'm never going to eat an apple again. Now I win. I win. I hate apples now suddenly. I liked them a minute ago. Look how powerful I am.
Right. I do things that other people don't want.
Yeah.
And so, in kind of a brilliant stroke of genius here at the end, Rebecca starts to kind of plead with the Great Honored Matre to hire her. Give me a job. I would love to work for you. I see all of the wealth and power around you. Let me join you.
What a great life that would be. Yeah.
What a great life that would be. Get me off of Gamu. Get me off of the farm.
Last thing I want is to be sent back to Gamu, back to the farm alive.
Please never send me back to the farm alive. And of course, the Great Honored Matre is like, bitch, you're going back to the Gamu farm alive. Okay?
Checkmate.
I'm never going to hire you.
Yeah.
I'm not even hiring right now. I don't have the head count.
And I will. I keep pleading for HR to open up some spots, but they're so stingy. Yeah. I love the idea of going like, I'm not going to even kill you because now you know how good life could be. So to live is greater punishment. It's like so easily played.
Sure. Yeah. It's so arrogant.
It's so good.
Yeah. Against Logno's wishes, by the way. Logno is like, can we torture her? Logno very much is like the Belanda of Great Honored Matre, you know? Like,
yeah.
Why don't we torture her? Let's just torture her. And Great Honored Matre is like, Logno, shut the fuck up. Take her back to Gamu, keep her alive. And Rebecca recognizes even this is a strategic move, actually, from the Honored Matre. She's not just an evil cackling villain.
Yeah.
This is strategic. She wants to send Rebecca back as bait for a bigger target. What that bigger target is, we don't know yet, but that's Great Honored Matre's play here, and Rebecca recognizes that as well. So she goes back to Gamu.
I really appreciated that because, like, yeah, we see Rebecca acknowledges with all of her other memory knowledge as well. This is why the Great Honored Matre, this unremarkable little woman, is the Great Honored Matre. She is a tactician, even though she's straight up. I think someone, Pilot Pig said in the chat, laughed when it said she wiped her hands on the shirt of an attendant. She is almost a comical villain, but she's smart. She is actually smarter than her brutal ways would suggest, even though she's straight up like inviting people to one-on-one chats as she's like fucking in the darkness. She is still a tactician, and she is still using her mind very actively, and that's why she is at the top of the power, top of the heap, right? I really appreciated that because, again, it is easy to see the Honored Matre as this like two-dimensional cardboard cutout of just like violence and impulse and like sexuality and instinct. But the ones in power are actually quite strategic. And that's why they are actually winning the war against the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, and actually that is one of my critiques of this chapter and of this book is I do kind of see the Honored Matre as not quite three-dimensional villains. We talk a lot about how Frank is so good at playing with the gray area.
Yeah.
There's always good in the bad and bad in the good. And no one since probably Baron Harkonnen has there been such a clear-cut villain in the Dune series. I guess Winsisia as well. She's kind of like a cackling villain. But I find myself hoping, and I felt this in Heretics as well, and I'm feeling it now here in Chapterhouse, I hope we learn more about the Honored Matre, right? They are such an existential threat that I want them to have more depth. I want to learn more of their motivations. I want to learn more of their inner workings. And I don't want them to just be this like hypothetical White Walker, that's like from Game of
Sure,
Thrones,
sure.
this extinction level White Walker threat. I thought the White Walkers were like an incredibly weak part of Game of Thrones, right?
Sure,
And it was actually the politics of the Seven Kingdoms that was the best part of Game of Thrones, because everyone was so fleshed out and no one was necessarily a bad guy. And so I felt that reading and rereading this chapter this week. I was like, gosh, Great Honored Matre, I appreciate that we get the depth of her intelligence, but she is still like kind of hilariously evil.
Yeah.
In a way that starts to get a little bit into caricature territory for me.
I think the interesting thing, let's say hypothetically, we don't learn any more about them and they remain how they are so far that we've seen.
Yeah.
I still think that they are a little bit above White Walker territory of caricature because they are effectively a what if played out about the Bene Gesserit.
Yeah.
What does it mean that the second you take away other memory, you have things like the Honored Matre coming out of the Bene Gesserit order? How close are the Bene Gesserit to this type of caricature bullshit that you remove one element of their history and suddenly you've got cackling wiping your hand on the shirts of attendees? I think every dark moment of the Honored Matre can be seen juxtaposed against the sort of like civility of the Bene Gesserit in a book that is highly critical of both. And the book is saying, look at these two orders and how different they are, but also how shockingly similar they are. And how truly,
great point.
The more of a caricature the Honored Matre are, the more that is a condemnation of what the Bene Gesserit have become and what the Bene Gesserit do. Again, I think we could have a whole conversation about, look at how fucking disposable everyone is to the Honored Matre. And then you go, is it any different for the Bene Gesserit, where everyone is a pawn to be manipulated?
Great point.
Yeah, you're not wiping your hand on the shirt of the attendee, but you've totally stole their autonomy and their ability to choose for themselves and their ability. It's like, I think there's something really poignant there. So even if they remained caricatures, I think there's still a really interesting juxtaposition being had here because the focus of this book is the Bene Gesserit. But
yeah, that's so true. Yeah, great point. And genuinely, that helps me think of it a little bit differently. That your thoughts there, Leo, genuinely help me reconsider it. Maybe.
Well, I hadn't had them until you said what you said. So we're teamwork makes the dream happen, as everyone famously says.
We're just bouncing the ball back and forth. Okay, let's wrap up this chapter summary. Just a last little bit here to go. Rebecca is back on Gamu. She reunites with the rabbi, and they basically immediately pick up the argument from earlier again. The rabbi, again, is debating Rebecca's state of mind. He's actually even more worried now because he's like, wait a second. Remember how I told you I don't trust the Bene Gesserit? You're back here acting like you're way more comfortable with the Bene Gesserit now? Like you've really integrated your other memory? That's not what I told you to do. He's becoming more and more nervous that he is losing a beloved member of his community to the Bene Gesserit. And Rebecca is, in this moment, unlike the earlier conversation, in this second conversation, she's very direct with him. She states that she has this connection to countless, quote unquote, unclean ancestors who committed atrocious acts like we all do. Because again, the victors are the ones that breed. That's what she says. And that's something that we shouldn't shy away from and that we should recognize. That is just a part of our ancestry and who we are. Oh. And the rabbi, of course, thrown off by all of this and doesn't want to get into this. He's worried about what the other memory is teaching Rebecca versus what he has spent probably his lifetime teaching her and raising her within his beliefs. And she is very upfront with him and really cuts to the chase. She recognizes that she's hurting the rabbi by saying these things, but also recognizing that he needs to hear these things. He needs to hear what she knows and how she is changing and evolving. She's ripping the Band-Aid off. No sugarcoating here. And that's where the chapter ends, with a deeply distraught rabbi worrying about what has happened to Rebecca and what she is becoming.
The end of this chapter in relation to, it's fascinating, really interesting to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this as a justification for why the Bene Gesserit operate in such a ends justify the means way. they have other memory. They can see all the atrocities humanity has committed in the past, that their own ancestors have committed. And for them, anything they do now may or may not be as bad as that. But if their end goal is to be better, isn't that worth anything? We've already committed so many atrocities. What's a few more if the end goal is a better humanity, a more peaceful humanity? So this was, for me, an interesting insight into Bene Gesserit thinking, into what happens when you have access to countless memories and how that reshapes your world. It reminds me of the Dr. Manhattan problem, where you almost lose touch with humanity because you now see and know too much.
Yeah. Yeah, and also why Leto became the God Emperor tyrant that he was. Because again, he did some fucked up atrocities that we didn't dwell on because we skipped over 3,000 years between God Emperor of Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune. But like,
yeah,
he caused billions and billions of deaths. And by shortening humans' lifespan, like what are the years he's taken from all of humanity? We got hints of that, but we didn't really see it. And yet there he is, there he is doing that stuff. Because he has that wide view. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we have some takeaways to get into, if you can believe it. Those were just the summaries. So don't go anywhere. Dear listener, when we're back, we've got some takeaways right after this.
Welcome back, folks. Let's now dive into today's takeaway.
Let's do it.
We're going to be talking about the idea of the watchdogs that Odrade brings up with Marbella. So we want to spend some time with this idea of the watchdogs because I think there's some interesting layers here to unpack. Layers that tell us more about the inner workings of the sisterhood, but then also are related to some of the larger political themes that Frank is always hitting on in these novels. So I want to spend some time unpacking that together. And to start, I think let's just begin with Odrade's definition of watchdog, as she explains it to Marbella. Quote, "Watchdogs," Odrade said, responding to a question from Marbella. "It means we are mutual gadflies. Don't make that more than it is. We seldom nag. A simple word can be enough." End quote.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. I liked that a lot too. And in fact, this inspired me to go Google the word gadfly because I was like, is she just talking about the animal?
Yeah.
Just the animal? Or does this have a...
Also, what is a gadfly? I didn't even know. Yeah, I had to Google it. I was like, what is gadfly? Is this a Frank Herbert invention, like a thorse or a slig?
No, a real thing. It turns out a gadfly is a species of fly that bites and annoys livestock, but the word can also be defined as, quote, a person who stimulates or annoys other people, especially by persistent criticism, end quote. And as always with Frank, I think he's using it in both contexts.
Right.
Basically, Odrade is explaining to Marbella here that all sisters are trained to both act as watchdogs and be used to constant scrutiny. They are always watching each other and are always aware that they are being watched by their fellow sisters. Odrade says, quote, "We welcome it because it keeps us on our toes." End quote. Okay, interesting. Here's Marbella's thoughts on it, and I found this contrast very interesting. Marbella is repulsed by this idea of always being monitored. Yeah. And remember, for the past decade-ish now, Marbella and Duncan have been under constant monitor by the Commeyes, by the Sisterhood, because they've been trapped inside the no-ship. So Marbella has first-hand experience with this. And I found this really interesting because so far in the novel, it's becoming clear to me that Marbella's role in this story is the outsider who's being brought into the Bene Gesserit fold. She is the rebel who's being indoctrinated or brought in to Bene Gesserit dogma. So she is often critical of it. And I think it is important for us as the reader to take anything Marbella says quite seriously, because it is also the vehicle through which Frank is being critical of the Sisterhood, asking us, the reader, to be critical of this organization. So I found Mirbella's response to the idea of watchdogs really fascinating. She sums it up by simply stating, quote, "It sounds oppressive," end quote.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about that pendulum swinging from like full, surveillance state to the like reckless violence and directionless brutality of the honored matre. Like the idea that you have this swing, and that's the spectrum, and we're seeing it on full display here. But I also really, I do want to dwell just for a second on the idea that like the idea of accountability is not necessarily oppressive. And if you think of any accountability as oppression, that's kind of a young perspective, right? The idea that any accountability is like Big Brother's always watching you. And it doesn't have to be black or white, right? It can be a kind of gray area in between.
Yeah. And that's really the question here, is how do the Bene Gesserit implement their watchdog system, right? Is it subtle and soft accountability, or is it an oppressive means of control? Because oftentimes internal surveillance systems, like a watchdog system where you have a group of people watch internally each other to keep each other in line, can very quickly devolve into very authoritarian systems of control and oppression. Whether it's within an organization, within a religion, or at a state level. I was doing some quick Googling, I was like, what are some famous and notorious internal surveillance systems throughout history? And two examples that came up, for example, in real world history were Scientology used to have, I think, I don't know if they have it currently, this idea of sec checks, but basically you'd be like quizzed on your faith to make sure you were still like part of the faith and like that you were still in line with the teachings. And at a state level, another example that infamously exists is the Ministry for State Security, more commonly known as the Stasi, in East Germany during the Cold War from, I believe, the 50s to 1990 when the wall fell, I think. So those are examples where a secret police from the state or a religion that has like internal checks on its members is used in an oppressive and controlling way. Like these systems will often perpetuate authoritarian manipulation, and they will be used to suppress resistance internally within the organization, right? They foster this environment of paranoia and self-policing. We see Odrade do that even early in this book, right? She's like, the comm eyes are watching me, so I can't behave a certain way because the sisters who are monitoring me will then react. That's a form of self-policing.
Or every time she does anything, she's like, and I know that this little emotional outburst will be analyzed and like, picked apart by the many people who are always watching.
Exactly. It creates this like environment of paranoia. Imagine living under that constantly. And I think surveillance systems like this also create these incredibly imbalanced relationships between the members of the organization and the leaders of the organization. Because when you're constantly being surveilled, the leaders know more about you than you know about them. And it is hard to keep people in power accountable when you don't know about them, when you don't know about their decision-making or the inner workings of their systems. But it is easy for them to suppress you when they know everything about you all the time because you're constantly under surveillance. I also think this type of surveillance isn't just like cameras everywhere, right? Like surveillance makes you think like security cameras. I think it becomes incredibly effective and maybe most effective and dangerous when it becomes invisible, right? When it becomes so deeply ingrained within the culture of that group or that state that nobody thinks about it anymore, right? It is just the status quo that this is how we operate and this is how things are done. Which, bringing this back to what Odrade is saying and thinking of how the Bene Gesserit have classically operated now for thousands of years, it does raise some questionable red flags for me about the sisterhood. It's easy to see how they have become trapped in their dogma and in their ways of thinking if they've had this watchdog system in place for thousands of years. Sister watching sister, an environment of paranoia, an environment where you are self-policing because you know the sister in the room next to you is watching you, and you don't want to act out of line or against the plan. You don't want to be a rebel or a heretic.
Yeah, especially you can imagine, like, we've seen the sisterhood under Taraza and now Odrade, who both kind of like encourage people like, Schwung, you bing. But like, you imagine a previous Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother Superior might not have been so supportive of heretical thinking, and then it's like a police state.
Yeah.
And how easily it would be one side of the coin or the other. Also, we know, I mean, we just took the Bene Gesserit to court in a recent episode, but like, we know the Bene Gesserit do fucked up shit. Like, I was looking back at Dune when Paul is asking, I think it's Paul asking Jessica, or maybe it's Paul asking Moheim, why Bene Gesserit members don't know who their family is. And this is the quote, we might, for example, have wanted to breed her to a close relative to set up a... Fuck me. I'm reading an audiobook these days. This is hard. Quote, we might, for example, have wanted to breed her to a close relative to set up a dominant in some genetic trait. End quote. So like the idea of we're not going to tell you who your family is because we might need to breed you with your brother. That's uncomfortable. Yep. And this is the byproduct of this need to know basis. And every Bene Gesserit only knows a little bit of the puzzle. We understand why, but it doesn't make it any less icky from like a moral standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the constant tension here is like we feel a pull against a sense of rightness, but it is how they do it and how they've done it for thousands of years.
Yeah. And it's interesting to consider how Odrade describes it in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share this next quote because I've laid out sort of the worst case scenario of an internal surveillance system,
like
right? A watchdog system,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like this is the worst it can become. It can become the Stasi. The way Odrade describes the Bene Gesserit watchdog system, though, feels maybe a little different. Quote, we're always mindful of one another. Some of us in positions of power can be authoritarian at times, familiar even, but only to a point carefully measured for the requirements of the moment. End quote. That
made
me raise my eyebrow quizzically. You know, I was like, hello. Okay.
Yeah, for listeners only, his eyebrows as high as it can go. It's incredible. I've never seen your eyebrows so high. Wow.
I found this really fascinating because, again, just a few minutes ago, I laid out the worst case scenario where watchdog systems and surveillance states can perpetuate authoritarian power. Odrade here seems to be describing a Bene Gesserit method of using it that curbs authoritarian tendencies within their organization, within their leadership.
Yeah.
Using it maybe more like a soft checks and balance system rather than a tool of control.
Right.
I found that really interesting.
Right. I think one of the big differences here is that like the head of heads, right? Like the highest point in power in the universe, Odrade, is under constant surveillance and is constantly marking her behaviors for those who are technically under her direct report, but they are still holding her accountable for everything she does. And presumably there are things that can be taken, actions that can be taken against her if she's getting out of line. And that's also where like people like Belanda are so important. Even though Belanda's constantly suggesting you pull off people's fingers and torture and all sorts of violent shit, it's like that balancing is an important piece of the structure and why it's not, Stalin making sure everyone under him is being held accountable when no one's holding him accountable. Yeah. And I think that's like one of the important differences here.
That's a great point. Mother Superior is just as watched as any other sister in the organization, all the way down to the lowliest acolyte freshman who just got situated in her dorm and is starting class next week. Everyone top to bottom equally under the same watchdog system, which you're absolutely correct, differentiates it from a more authoritarian system. And I think there are some upsides to this, right? To leaning into a watchdog system like this. I think it can help, for example, the Bene Gesserit root out and avoid corruption within their ranks, which ultimately serves the purpose of preventing schisms within the organization. Because when you think about it, we've been saying this all episode, in some sense, aren't the Honored Matres just an offshoot of sisters who threw caution to the wind out there in the scattering? They could be, in some sense, considered a schism, a corrupt schism of the Bene Gesserit, a corrupt branch of sisters.
Totally. Yeah.
That fell outside the watchdog system and thus could no longer be contained. That's an interesting thing to consider, a positive outcome of this system. I think also it creates redundancies within the sisterhood so that one rogue sister, for example, can't actually bring down an entire plan because there's no one point of failure. If there is a leak within the organization, there are a dozen other watchful sisters within this watchdog system ready to jump in and plug that leak right away. So it creates these like redundancies so that one domino can't just make the whole house fall over.
Yeah.
And you already touched on this, but I think there's a strong accountability system here for the sisters in power, which I think is what differentiates it from an authoritarian system. No one sister, even the Mother Superior, can accumulate too much power within this organization. Odrade constantly being watched, constantly watchful of her own actions, so as not to alarm or alert the sisters who are always keeping an eye on her. Plus, I greatly appreciate the fact that Odrade has close advisors like Tamerlane and Belanda who are constantly just pushing back against her, right?
Yeah.
They are not yes men who just agree to everything Odrade says. They are watchdogs. Odrade even calls Belanda a watchdog in these chapters today. Their job is to watch the Mother Superior, the most powerful sister, and to question and push against the Mother Superior. That is their role. That's what they've been trained to do. That's what every sister has been trained to do in their watchdog system. So there are some notable benefits here. You know, it doesn't exactly play out like a secret police authoritarian state system that is meant simply to oppress the people beneath.
Well, and also think about how it's juxtaposed against, as you're pointing out, the schism organization, the Honored Matre. Look at Logno. Logno as the right-hand woman to the great Honored Matre, akin to someone like a Belanda. But instead, when she pushes back, the great Honored Matre is like, shut the fuck up, I'll kill you. Shut up, you know? And that's their rapport, is this like sniveling attendant and her, you know, boss who will kill her if she does anything wrong, compared to Belanda and Odrade, who's like, let's eat lunch. And someone like Logno is not someone who's benefiting the great Honored Matre and keeping her accountable, right?
Yeah, exactly. Although, to your point from earlier, Frank is also holding up a mirror to the Bene Gesserit.
Yes.
Odrade does shut Belanda down in this chapter. She says,
does.
Watchdogs can bark too loud, Belanda.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck
It's
up.
true. Yeah. You've gone too long. You're a gadfly. You've bit me too many times.
You've bit me too
Stop
many times.
biting me.
So again, I think there's so much like delicate nuance here to your point from earlier, and how the Bene Gesserit and this Honored Matre are such mirror entities, and you can see so many ways they're different.
So true, yeah.
And so many problematic ways in which they are alike.
Yeah. In spite of how they like narratively frame with all of their beautiful words, how they work. And I think as we wrap up, it is interesting to think about this dichotomy of the narrative framing of the Bene Gesserit, but then also the perspective of the outsider Mirbella, as she, as an Honored Matre, witnesses these power systems and goes, this seems kind of fucked up. Actually, if you ask me, despite your beautiful words, this kind of feels fucked up. Mirbella recognizes this and calls it out as a system of control designed to keep its individual members in, quote, a comfortable niche, end quote. the idea of like, yeah, you are the archivist or you are Belanda, but as soon as you start stepping out of that niche, you're pushed back into it by these systems.
Right. The watchdogs are onto you.
The watchdogs, the gadflies bite you. Meanwhile, O'Drade recognizes the benefits. She's framing, this is why we do it this way. We are keeping our organization healthy with this immune system designed to identify and address internal problems before they become fatal. And look how successful we have been.
Right.
I think, kind of wrapping up, I would say we see, starting in Heretics, that this is perhaps erred on the side of conservatism for too long. They have been too careful, shutting down too many things, and it has kept them from evolving, and it has kept them from being true to their kind of North Star and their noble purpose. Perhaps, as the rabbi in the reading today suggests, quote, without a blinding flash of illumination, end quote, right? They have lost the plot in serving humanity's best interests. But now that they are facing the honored matre, and they have the outsider like Marbella giving her commentary, I think we are seeing them facing this existential threat. We are seeing the great pattern of Amtal applied to the Bene Gesserit order as a whole, bringing it to its breaking point in a way that it never has before. What are the true colors? Let's get rid of the beautiful words. What is the actual nature of the Bene Gesserit as it stands today? And the criticisms that Marbella is levying against it, perhaps they are truer than O'Drade, Belanda, and Tamerlane would want them to be. Maybe her criticisms hit closer to home than they would prefer. They're like, no, we're good. It's like, maybe not as much as you think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's beautifully put, Leo. I think you're absolutely spot on. I find myself leaning a little more Team Marbella here because I find myself questioning how much O'Drade can recognize an oppressive system when she has been raised within one. You know, if every sister has been, maybe brainwashed is too aggressive of a term, but let's just say brainwashed to think that the watchdog system is beneficial, as O'Drade, you know, kind of lays out here for Marbella, it's impossible then for her to see it as oppressive because she's been trained to only think of the watchdog system in one way. For her, it is part of the duty of being a sister is you participate in this system. And I think it takes someone like Marbella to be like, nah, I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Can't that go really wrong? Can't you fall too deeply into your own dogma? Can't you become too oppressive and stagnant? Doesn't that limit agency both internally and externally for your sisters? It takes a character like Marbella to come in and question that, I think, to shake someone out of that brainwashing. And so I think you're right. Like, I think O'Drade, Belanda, Tamerlane would hear these critiques from Marbella and go, I thought we were good, but now I'm starting to question things.
Yeah.
And I think that is at the core of this story. That is the transformation that the Bene Gesserit has been undergoing probably since Taraza, since Heretics of Dune, since Taraza's leadership pushing toward that heretical thinking to shake up the way the Bene Gesserit has operated for millennia. And we're seeing that addressed quite directly through characters like Marbella and Duncan and even Shiana.
Yeah, and I wonder maybe that's also why O'Drade is being so open with Marbella telling her things about the organization. Maybe she's using Marbella as an outside sounding board, as a heretic herself. Maybe she's going, hey, here's our system. What do you think about that? And Marbella goes, oh, I think it's oppressive. And she goes, okay, yeah, fair. But here's why we do it. And Marbella's like, no, I don't know. Still feels icky to me. And O'Drade's like, all right, maybe it's icky. Hey, who knows? You know, I don't know for sure, but it does. O'Drade feels like the sort of person. Belanda, maybe even Tamerlane, seem like the sort who really believe in the Bene Gesserit, like stock, you know, full hilt. So, but I think O'Drade is someone who might even disclose more than Belanda would want her to Marbella in order to get a sense of, are we still on our noble path? Or perhaps was the tyrant correct? And perhaps, you know, she's got Sea Child. She is, again, at the core of her being, she is a heretic. So
she is.
maybe that's
You're absolutely
the point.
right. I think Odrade is special in that way, in a way that Belanda and Tamlane are not. I think Shiana is maybe intentionally being nurtured by Odrade to be a rebel. And I think even in this conversation with Marbella, this is kind of beyond the Watchdog conversation, but they start talking about love at the end of that chapter. And Odrade thinks there's hope yet for Marbella. She still has love for Duncan, and she doesn't want to give up that love. That is a heretical thought for the Mother Superior to have, and yet she has it. So I think you're absolutely right. Odrade is using these rebels around her as sounding boards as she is slowly reshaping herself and ultimately reshaping the sisterhood from the inside out, from the top down, now that she's Mother Superior.
That whole conversation. So there's no love among the Bene Gesserit. How sad her tone. There was hope for Marbella yet.
There was hope for Marbella yet. That is a thought that Odrade has. She's a rebel, baby.
She's a rebel. And even, she says, love occurs, but my sisters treat them as aberrations. Again, separating herself from her sisters.
My sisters, right? Not sisters. We treat them. She didn't say we.
So, and then Marbella. So what I feel for Duncan is aberration. Odrade and sisters will try to treat it. Again, won't successfully eradicate it.
They will. They will. The old sisterhood will. My new sisterhood is going to be different.
And to Marbella's credit, again, I always look for this where Frank is giving people the truth as a means of like his token of approval. Odrade says, love is considered a sign of rot in sisters. Again, I don't consider it that, but it is considered generally. And Marbella's response, I see signs of rot in you.
Because sea child love.
Because sea child.
The core inner love that Odrade has been hiding. We talked about it last episode.
And I think this is Frank signing to us, Marbella is not just picking holes where holes need not be picked. She is seeing clearly elements of these characters, and she is seeing the organization with some clarity because she sees signs of love in Odrade where perhaps others are fully blind to it because they believe in the Bene Gesserit, whatever conditioning. It's so good.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are the kind of layers that honestly totally went over my head when I first read this book.
Same.
And it's really now that we're looking at it so deeply, now that we're looking at it after years of understanding of the previous books, right? Because this is Frank, to some extent, pushing back on his own ideas from the first 3 books, right?
Totally.
Like this is Frank's own ideas evolving about the sisterhood and their role in politics. And it's really fascinating stuff in a meta context when you consider it as Frank's writing career, as he's growing and exploring these big ideas that he's always grappled with in these stories. I love it.
Meanwhile, people who like read the books too quickly are like, but where are the laws of tigers and the battles? It's like there's a lot of subtlety going on. It's so good.
Yeah. And again, you have to almost read it line by line by line because it's so dense.
It's a good sign. It's a good thing we're doing this book club.
That's what we're here for. All right, folks. That's our very, very dense takeaway. Super fun to chat with you about that, Leo. I think we both had some real-time revelations sitting right here talking about it that weren't even in our script. Always fun to do that. So let's take another quick break, though. Let's compose ourselves. And let's find an assistant that we can wipe our hands on because we have some spice morsels on our plate coming up next. We ordered lunch, baby. Hope you're hungry.
They're juicy.
They're juicy. We'll see you in a minute, folks.
That's what it's going to sound like. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're ready for a couple of really big, chunky, juicy spice morsels. I could have held back. I did not. Let's talk about our first spice morsel. And this is Gadarene swine, I think is how you say it. Now, in today's reading, the rabbi thinks the following about the women in Rebecca's other memory. Quote, they were not Gadarene swine to be driven into the sea and their diabolism with them. I don't know that word. End quote. Now, this reference went over my head. I was like, Gadarene swine.
Mine too.
Don't know her. Who's she? Does she go to this school? I don't think so. So I looked into it because I wanted to learn more. And As always, Frank was not pulling punches with his references, and in this is using some very heavy religious imagery in this line that we absolutely missed on our first read through of the book. And I wanted to highlight it because I think it can give us all a bit of depth. Also, very interesting to think about how it reflects on the Honored Matre. So now this reference actually goes to the New Testament, Matthew 8:28. And here is the full quote, actually. So this is what the Gadarene swine is referencing. Quote, when he arrived, he is Jesus, when he arrived at the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. Kind of Honored Matre like. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs. He said to them, go! So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. And classic. You know,
Wow.
You just shout go at a pack of pigs and they all drown themselves full of demons. Classic. If you're the Son of God, that happens is it Tuesday? It sounds like a Tuesday to me. Now, the men tending the pigs suddenly were out of job because all their pigs just drowned themselves. They ran to town. They reported this. This became one of the many miracles that Jesus performed and is sometimes referred to as the miracle of the Gadarene swine. Now, also as a side note, this is also the origin of the English adjective Gadarene. I didn't even know this was an adjective, but you can use it to, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, refer to, quote, involving or engaged in a headlong or potentially disastrous rush to do something, end quote. You can say it was a Gadarene period of that town or that populace, which, by the way, holy shit, the Honored Matre are very Gadarene. They are literally leading to humanity's extinction through what they're doing in the Imperium.
Right. Headlong into a potentially disastrous rush.
That is them, one for one. And so as the rabbi, so we go back to Dune, right? The rabbi understands these millions of other memories, these lives now residing within Rebecca, and he remarks, although they are not Jewish, they are not part of their trusted inner circle, they are not demons to be exorcised into animals and killed. They are civil. They are allies on some level. They are trusted to some degree. And again, how much they differ from the demons, the violent, those 2 demon-possessed men are so like the Honored Matre. They are not like the Honored Matre, who are this existential threat and very much should be driven out and killed, right? And besides, even were Rebecca, say, to fall to abomination, or even were she to become violent or whatever, he doesn't himself possess the ability to exorcise these demons and kill them, quote, and I am not another Jesus, end quote. An interesting look at the way that the rabbi is processing all of this stuff that's happening. And again, Gadarene swine, what a crazy line to just drop and then not explore at all, considering all of this imagery. Also, as was brought up earlier in the live chat, Eli was pointing out, why would a rabbi reference the New Testament like that? Which is another interesting question, because again, where the Jewish holy texts end and the Christian New Testament begins, there's a divide there. I don't know a ton about it. I'm Buddhist, so people write into us, email us your explanations. Maybe this is how Judaism has evolved over the tens of thousands of years. It started considering some of the New Testament as pieces of stock literature to learn and to understand. We've already seen Zen Sufi combinations of Sufism and Zen Buddhism and Christianity. The Orange Catholic Bible is itself an amalgam of many different faiths. Maybe Judaism has changed as well. I don't know. So all of this is very interesting and was totally missed by me on my first read through. So now you too know, dear listener, about the Gadarene swine and how interesting that is, juxtaposing, again, the Bene Gesserit, not Gadarene swine, and the Honored Matre, Gadarene swine, for their violence, their headlong rush into self-destruction.
Yeah. Great morsel. I found myself wondering what the heck that meant every time I read this chapter. And I was like, nah, Leo's got this. He'll look it up for me.
He'll do the deep dive. By the way, looked up. I was like, can people explain what this passage in the Bible means? Terrible decision. There were so many explanations. I am not cut out for comparative religion.
All right, let's talk about morsel number 2 and clean up our plate here, folks. Morsel number 2, biomimicry.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot on this podcast about how awful the Tleilaxu are, those sons of bitches.
Terrible, awful, disgusting.
And in today's reading, we actually are given even more ammunition. To hurl at them.
Yeah.
Because we're given some more information and a new angle on their absolutely unforgivable technology, axolotl tanks.
Yeah.
Here's the passage. Quote, "The Tleilaxu solution was direct. Use the original. Nature already had worked it out over eons. All the Beni Tleilax need do was add their own control system, their own way of replicating information stored in the cell." End quote.
Yeah.
We're not going to create a mechanical womb. We are going to literally use people to birth Golas.
Evolution
and to do
figured
our
all that
biological
out.
experiments.
Yeah.
Right. Why try to do what biology has already accomplished over eons?
Yeah. And you go,
Gross.
hey, basic fucking morals. And they're like, don't
Ethics,
know.
maybe?
I don't know that word. I've never learned it.
Let's bring this back around to the field of biomimicry, or the idea of biomimicry. It's in the word, basically. It's this idea that humans look to nature for solutions to complex problems, right? A lot of our technology is based off of what we have learned and seen in nature around us and what nature does every single day. And so you did some incredible research here. You dove into some examples of biomimicry that we can point toward.
It's cool.
So there's some obvious ones, right? Human flight.
Yeah.
Birds fly. We created giant metal birds.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear one.
Huge.
There's also some recent research about medical needles being inspired by mosquitoes.
Yeah.
How do mosquitoes penetrate your skin and drop a little bit of whatever inside your underneath your skin? They use a needle. So why we should also use a very thin needle to do that?
Yeah. I saw literally the measurements comparing like mosquito proboscis or proboscides or whatever they are, compared to medical needles. And it's still crazy. I mean, needles have gotten a lot thinner over the last 30 years, but people are still looking to the insect kingdom to go, how can we make it better? It's fascinating.
How can we make it
so
better?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nature has spent eons figuring this out. We just need to copy it.
Yeah.
You then, of course, went deeper because 2 simple examples is never enough for Leo Wiggins.
Yeah, boring.
So here's some deep cut examples, folks, of biomimicry, technology that humans have created based off of what we see in nature that you may not know of. So first up, you found that Atsushi Taro at Hokkaido University proposed and demonstrated the viability of using slime mold
Insane.
to plan city infrastructure and rail systems.
Incredible. So cool.
How wild is that? Is
It's
that
so-
based off of the way the slime mold grows and the way it expands, and using that as a template for how a city might grow and expand?
They put the favorite food of the slime mold in the places of the city centers. And within a very short time period, it recreated the modern Tokyo subway system layout on its own.
Wow.
And this is a layout system that has been perfected by made better by humans over hundreds of years. And the idea is we need to create new infrastructure. We can use this as a system. Now, granted, he took it and then he refined it with computer models, and then he made it even better to take into consideration other factors and stuff. But it is able to provide the first template very quickly, and it's super rad. Yeah, Atsushi Taro. Very, very cool work.
Wow. Okay, I'm looking at this next bullet point, Leo, and I'm going to let you take this one because there's a lot of words in here that I do not know, and I'm assuming you looked them up in your research.
Yeah, we can tag team this morsel because this is, again, a chunky boy. So this is research out of the California Institute of Technology,
Okay.
I'm going to butcher this dude's name. Radwanul Siddiqui, something like that, was looking at the wings of black butterflies in that they absorb and take advantage of a lot of sunlight and a lot more than can be reasonably explained by how thin they are. And so they, under photo magnification, were realizing that they contain nanostructures. They included little holes that allowed it to refract light and actually absorb up to something like 60 or 70% more sunlight than just a flat structure. So the idea being you could create thin photovoltaic or solar cells that absorb 60, 70, 80% more sunlight by studying the structure, the nanostructure of butterfly wings. Fucking so cool. And that was back in 2017.
Yeah, and how that could vastly improve, for example, solar panel technology, right? Solar energy.
Yeah, by looking at butterflies. What the fuck? That's so cool.
Incredible. Well, you also, I appreciated that you did this for our script here. You looked up the term biomimicry and its origins, and it's actually quite recent. This is a relatively recent idea and term. It was coined in the 1950s by Otto Schmidt, and it was really given its own life by Janine Benyus, who wrote about it in her 1997 book, Biomimicry, Innovation Inspired by Nature.
Which specifically I wanted to look into because the question is always, hey, how much of this was already well documented by the time Frank was researching and writing these books? As he talks about the Benny Tleilax perfecting what nature had already created, or not perfecting, but I don't know, twisting disgustingly what nature had already created.
Those are the words.
Yeah. Not perfecting. To be very clear, don't like it. Point is, this term, this idea, Otto had used it in the 50s. So by the 60s, the 70s, and 80s, it was something that was out there. So it's very likely Frank was drawing a little bit from that bleeding edge scientific field that was developing. Not that humans haven't been doing it for thousands of years, but just
humans have been doing this forever, right?
Yeah.
A lot of even basic tools humans use is because we watched nature around us do it, and we copied it. Fascinating stuff. Okay, let's bring this morsel home and bring it back to Dune. So bringing my biomimicry all the way back around. It's pretty clear that the Benny Tleilax have leaned into this idea of biomimicry, right? The human womb already does the function of what we need it to do. Let's just recreate that in our axolotl tanks, and actually let's just use the womb itself. Why try to do eons of work and create our own womb? Now the Bene Gesserit are doing this. The Bene Gesserit have their own axolotl tanks, and they're pretty well equipped to do it as well because they understand their bodies more than perhaps anyone else in this Imperium. Prana Bindu, the ability to control their metabolism.
Right.
The Bene Gesserit are very in touch with their bodies and thus are primed to be able to also have axolotl tanks, but also to appreciate how absolutely fucked up it is that the Tleilaxu did what they did.
Yeah.
It's horrendous stuff. And there's a quote here about Mirbella's inhuman speed, and it's really interesting the way it's described because it kind of hints at this idea of biomimicry. Quote, Mirbella moved with no resort to her central cortex, insect-like, an attack triggered by nerves at the point of muscle ignition, end quote.
Insect-like.
So there it is again, insect-like, this idea of humans being inspired by the nature around them and implementing it in their technology for better and worse.
Yeah, there it is. Biomimicry. So what do you think, Abu? Do you think Frank is predicting that we're going to go the way of axolotl tanks as a civilization?
No, I don't think so. I think he's just recognizing humans have done this forever, and it's something that we will continue to do as we discover and learn more about the world around us.
It's also very like Andrew Ryan in like BioShock. Just like if you take away all morality and ethics, it's like, what does science do? And it's like, well, the Tleilax point in case. Well, those are our morsels. Big old morsels for you today. As always, dear listener, now that we've covered those, here is your assigned reading for next week's episode or the next episode. Make sure you have read chapters 10 through 12 in the paperback version, or up to the line, if your version is a different edition than ours, quote, "You will not be disturbed here. I am refusing permission for anyone else to enter this room." End quote.
As an introvert, that's the dream.
Yeah. That's my love language. Won't be disturbed
Don't disturb
here.
me.
Yeah.
Don't walk into my room.
It's great.
Headphones, noise canceling headphones on.
On. Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
All right, folks. That's it for today's book club episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this very windy journey, but I think we got a lot out there. This was a dense episode, and this continues to be a very dense book. Before we let you go, though, as always, we have a couple of reminders for you on how to support the show and keep in touch with us. The two best ways to support the show are to, one, become a patron, patreon.com/comjabbar, ad-free episodes, early access to book clubs, invitations to the live recordings of these episodes, all of that and more on patreon.com. And of course, the second best way is to check out our merch store, comjabbarshop.com. Take a look at some of the Dune themed swag we have on that store. Buy yourself something nice, buy a loved one something nice. All of that helps make the show possible.
Indeed.
So be sure to check out those links in the show notes below.
Indeed. And hey, we love to hear from you. So email us, comjabbarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts, your questions, your observations from this chapter. Do you think it's interesting that Gadarene swine is a New Testament reference from a rabbi? I'm curious. I don't know any of this stuff. I'm Buddhist. So let us know. Send us your thoughts. Send us your questions, your comments, your feedback, your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your concerns, and of course, pictures of your cute pets. We love all of it. We respond in 1 to 7 business years, and we love to hear from you. So don't hesitate. Send us an email, comjabbarpodcast@gmail.com.
That's right. And don't forget that during these book club runs, we have mailbag episodes on the schedule.
True. Very true.
The earlier you get those questions in,
oh, great call out.
The more time we have to research them and include them in those mailbags. So get them in now.
Get them in now. We'll address them, and then we'll wipe our hands on your shirt. No, we won't.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll.
No.
Well, I don't know. Gadflies, stop biting us.
Do you feel like you're being watched, Leo?
Always. I mean, I have like 6 calm eyes on this shirt. I don't know who's watching them, but it came with the apartment. Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lord Party Podcast Network on lordparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. We're also on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden